Hello and welcome to NIAGA Spotlight with me, Tamina Castro. NIAGA Spotlight goes through the week in economic analysis and future affairs. Now, today on Analysis, we look at business trends 2025 with a focus on balancing life and technology. So, of course, the relationship between humans and technology is undeniably shifting and increasingly complex. Now, Accenture's Life Trends Report 2025 surveyed more than 24,000 respondents across 22 countries in July 2024 to identify and validate emerging digital trends and actions for businesses to take in 2025 via crowdsourced insights and intelligence. So, some of the findings include that inflation and the cost of living crisis are driving a desire towards working smarter, not harder, and of course, deeply influencing consumer behavior. So this clearly presents new opportunities for businesses to cater to today's informed consumer while balancing the risk profile of digitization and online realities across age demographics. This, of course, also includes children in today's day and age. Azwan Baharuddin, who is Country Managing Director with Accenture Malaysia, joins me now live in our studios to share more on these insights. Azwan, a very good morning. Thanks so much for making time for us. How are you doing today?
Good, thank you, Tamina. Thank you for having me.
Fantastic. So, great way to start off the year by speaking about Accenture's brand new report. Tell me a little bit more about some of the key trends which have been highlighted. It's introducing a couple of new terminology, but at the same time, the concepts are, I think, what we've already been feeling in society as a whole, right?
Yes, it's very interesting, right? So, I think there are 5 trends. Actually, and when I say it, you begin to connect the dots because you kind of feel it, but you don't quite see it. But with the 24,250 responses worldwide, you can actually visualize it now, right? So there are 5. So the first one is the cost of hesitation. So
okay.
this is interesting, right? So you know this concept where people say it all the time, say barang order, barang dapat.
Yes, the comparison.
It's completely different. So last time, if you think about it, we used to believe everything that we read, it must be fact.
Right.
Then over time, well, you realize it isn't. So then what consumers do today is they look at the ingredients like, you're looking at the, when you go to the shops, does it have this, that, or the other? Like someone looking, make sure that it's halal, right? So they have a certificate, does it have this kind of ingredients? So it's different. So what happens is then the trust erodes because I can no longer believe what I see online, so to speak.
And I want it fast, I want it quick.
Yes, I want it fast, I want it quick. But then it used to be, yep, I believe. And now with all the stuff that you see, well, can you believe? So then, therefore, what people look for when you order online are the reviews, right? So
absolutely.
You see,
I go to the reviews first. That's my instinct.
Yeah, so even when you have, after reading first 6, you got 5 stars, and then 1 or 2 get 1 or 2 stars, and then you go, why
maybe not.
Yeah, not so consistent, right? So that's one, cost of hesitation. That's interesting, right?
Okay.
So if people don't trust you, people won't buy from you, right? So I think that's challenging. Number 2, the parent trap. So parents are now, you used to see parents kind of letting kids watch YouTube or whatever it is, right? Online, all the applications, etc.
Like so a substitute parenting tool.
Yes, you see them in restaurants, like they put there. But then you have to, I think parents today are looking for kind of virtual seat belts, right? Safety, right?
Absolutely.
To make sure that, what their children see is moderated, so to speak, right? I think we used to think about, I'm sure somebody will moderate, but not true, because if it's a global content, it's easily accessible. It's very hard to get.
And not just global content, but just this week alone, Meta, via Mark Zuckerberg, has announced that they are no longer employing human moderation for online content. So those are entire platforms. You've got Facebook, Instagram, WhatsApp, and what have you.
Yes, all at the same time. Yeah. So then the third one, the third one is Impatience Economy. Right? So this one is obvious. So everybody today wants to get the services fast. They want it now. We used to be more patient, but today we're just not anymore. So, but this one hits mainly 3. You got health, finance, and entertainment. Right? So these 3, people are constantly impatient. They're always looking for alternative solutions every day.
Shortcuts.
Shortcuts. You know why? Because it's accessible. It's online. Right? So you can check. But then the problem is, when you read even, is that even true? So, you go to the doctor sometime.
Right.
So, I read on the internet that I've got this disease, I think I've got this.
Yes,
then
and the doctor just puts on his glasses and says, no, I don't think so.
What are you talking about?
Yeah.
You know, trust my 35 years of experience, you don't have whatever you think you have, right? But the experience comes to play. And then, of course, you have dignity of work. This one's interesting because as tools and technology, AI replaces people, so to speak, you know, when they are much better at and faster at... Imagine you're going to do an event. You can take 7 people to think about the event for the whole week before you come up with a potential agenda theme.
Right.
And today you can go to Gen AI and say, you know, as we're discussing, you put the...
Exactly. If you input the right and appropriate prompts, you're going to get it the same thing.
Exactly.
Yeah,
straight off the bat, right? But actually, what happens is people feel demotivated. So what they want is, you know, a bit of respect, a bit of dignity, and something to kind of make them come to work.
To feel of value at the very least.
To be valued, exactly. To be part of whatever's going on as opposed to just machine. And you have this new concept called social rewilding. So this is a new concept, even for me. This is when, actually, I think we used to like doing everything virtually. We attended virtual concerts at one point, right? So you had to pay to even attend virtual concerts.
That's right.
But then people don't want that now. So they're saying, hey, you know what? I want to go back to out there, interact people. I want to do yoga at the beach with many people. I want to do so many things, but I want to do it with people. So these are the 5 things. That's what's happening. That is shifting from, I think, during COVID, where we were extreme digital, to the point that we got digital fatigue, and now we're saying, hey, you know what? We are humans are social animals, right? So we need to connect with people. So these are the 5 things that's happening in the world right now.
So I think it's really interesting because I think Accenture's report is helping to actually capture what we've been feeling across time. That brings us to the next big area, Azwan, which is, of course, so how then can we play a part in ensuring that this becomes a part of our life? Mindfulness comes up, but how can mindfulness be an effective enough tool, especially when you're looking at not just organizational culture, but societal culture these days, which is all about going faster, doing more in less time?
Yes, and I think what we're becoming today, every day, you know, when you go social media, you do this, right? Endless scrolling, right? So you just do this and this and this.
And Malaysian spends about roughly on average 7 hours plus a day doing that.
That's incredible, actually.
Yeah.
Probably stuck in traffic or in the train.
Yes, very true.
But actually, that's incredible. So mindfulness is about asking yourself, is this thing adding value for me today, right? So I think when you look at companies or products today, then you have, you know, when you measure screen time, for example, right? Because you forget. This is when you go to bed, and you do this, and I think a lot of people realize sometimes the phone falls on your face when you're trying to go to sleep.
I think we've all been guilty of that at some point,
Yeah. So the other bit is also, people also understand that the algorithm are much better right now. So the challenge is, public opinion is shaped very much by the technology, and AI has this ability to form massive public opinion and to shift even voting sometimes, or public opinion on a particular subject. So I think people are more aware of that, so they question themselves whether the opinion that they have is actually their opinion, actually something they've read, and what is solidified with conversations with other people who saw the same content, and they all kind of agree, this is our opinion. But actually, they didn't necessarily look out there, right?
Very true. So I think the lack of critical thinking sometimes, it's actually jolted a lot of people into a cycle of wanting to be curious about it again.
Yes, and you go with the herd, right? So everybody does this, so that's why you do that. But actually, people are getting tired of that, so to speak, right? So I think there's other bit is, you know, real life connections for stress relief. So even the study in the survey, right? One of the questions was, what the most meaningful thing that you did? 42% said, you know, all the fact that I went out for dinner and went all the social activities was the most meaningful thing I did last week, and that's a big deal. I don't think we thought about that before, but now when you think about it, actually, you'd rather go out than sometimes order food in.
Yeah,
right? So
I think the difference a pandemic and lockdowns make to the human psyche, right?
Yes.
All right.
And the other one that is popular today is if you go for holidays, and a lot more people are looking for off-the-grid locations.
Yes,
right?
Very true.
Because sometimes when you have connectivity, you still tend to work. You do.
Yes, by default.
You don't think you do, but you got to check the email. That what happened. So I think this kind of shutdown, digital detox kind of locations are going to be key.
Exactly, because the digital detox once again comes back to a keen desire for mindfulness. So let's talk about companies and how they need to be working in 2025, Azwan, to address issues of consumer trust, specifically because, of course, a lot of the bulk of our purchases, for example, everything almost happens online.
Tamina, that's a great point, and trust is key, as we mentioned before. But I think in this case, transparency matters. What do I mean by that? For example, just like the ratings, for example, whenever you take, for example, ride-hailing, right?
Sure.
Home, etc., you want to know the rating of the driver, right? You want to be able to share your location to your loved one, because if something happens, somebody knows about it.
There's accountability built into the system.
So that's how they differentiate. But it's not just safety, but it's confidence that the driver is a good one. It's not going to take you around, etc. But then you have the situation that's also reversed. The driver also wants to know whether this guy is going to pay. Are you going to pay or not? Right?
Very true.
Etc. Right? Or because you got drunk every night and they're not pleasant, right?
Very true, very
true.
In the car. There's concerns on both sides when it comes to the consumer experience.
Yes, so that level of transparency, is key, right? Because you cannot just believe anymore, you cannot assume anymore. Then there are other companies, like a fast food chain here, that work with the social media folks to kind of create narratives that make sense, from their product to communities around them.
Right.
So I think that's also important. And then perhaps the last one is, explaining and resolving issues quickly. For example, when you had some messaging platforms, for example, people were concerned whether can the government read this? Can somebody hack into this? And then you say, hey, you know what? Then they come out and say, how the encryption system works, right? And then hundreds of millions of people got more confidence in trying to make sure that, okay, when they communicate, actually it's safe, it's secure. And that's important as well. So that drives. If it's not, then people choose other platforms that are, because there's so many of them you can choose from.
Yes, exactly. So I think the decentralization, which became a key feature of life and digital life, I think middle of 2024, is something that is probably going to continue. So what risks do you foresee businesses facing, Azwan, if on the flip side, they are unable to address the impatience and heightened expectations which all consumers are actually experiencing? And I'm also talking about the risks faced by both established entities as well as startups.
Oh no, so you risk being irrelevant very, very quickly because the population is very fickle and the population is getting younger. Did you know that the last boomer retired 31st December last year?
Oh, nice. Okay, that's a very interesting data point. So 31st December. Okay, it's a
60
generational shift actually occurred.
Literally just occurred in 2025.
Right.
So you have much younger population dominating business today. So you kind of have to cater for the demands, right? But then there are three, I said earlier, like health, for example, right? If you don't enable virtual appointments, so today insurance companies you can do virtual appointments with your doctor, and then the medicine can be delivered straight to your house, right? That's instant gratification. I get my medicine quickly, I get to see a doctor quickly. I'm sick. You expect me to go down to the clinic and drive, right, and get checked, and you got a fever, right? So actually, doctor can say any other symptoms. If none, then send you the medicine. So that's one.
And when you mention health, Azwan, I think it immediately brings up the increasing concerns, not just in Malaysia, but globally, especially with regards to Gen Z, who make up about 30% of workers now, mental health, right? So that's another huge accessibility issue that becomes a part of whether or not a business or an employment structure is actually going to succeed.
No, absolutely. I think for Gen Z's, mental health is absolutely critical. So I've never, in my past, I think a lot of people say, hey, you're tough, so you don't need all these things. But actually, the situation has changed. The pressure is much more real and is faster, right? You're not competing with your fellow colleagues, you're competing with the machine.
Very
right?
true.
So trying to make sure that you continue to be relevant is a real issue, right? So everything's moving too fast and people can't cope. Mental health is absolutely key. I think a lot organizations perhaps don't put a lot of emphasis on mental health, but Accenture, we do it a lot. It's absolutely critical because the work is so intense.
Kind of having it built into your structure rather than only addressing it when an emergency occurs, right?
Yes, kind of proactively engage, as opposed to, because when I've had conversations with folks that really have mental health issues,
right,
it's not easy, it's tough. So, and I found when I had the conversations, right, the folks are educating me because they're reading it more than what I'm reading because they're suffering it today. So even when I read quickly and try to have the conversation, they can quote from which book I was talking from. So it's incredible. So you've got to be able to keep up and with these folks. The other one is fintech.
Okay.
So fintech, if you look at it, so I spoke to some of the folks in the banking industry, and what they say to me is that, you know, Azwan, we're trying to remain composed. But actually, everybody's panicking because there's so many products out there, from, you know, crypto to digital banks to insurance companies. Everybody's providing fantastic, you know, products today. But in fact, you find the traditional banks are still pushing old products, right? So you are looking at all these new things that you're reading. You read something yesterday about, you know, this crypto that's about to be launched. Then somebody brings you very traditional fixed deposit type product that you're not interested in.
That's
so
right.
I think,
and the login may not work too well on the app. So,
no.
yeah, there you go.
No. And actually, the survey found that in the finance industry,
right,
28 of the respondents actually had a side hustle. Side hustle. Side hustle.
Yeah, well, you could say it's a bit of a hassle too.
Yeah, but no, but that's what they have. So because they're always looking for something new, because the banks, traditional banks, are not providing them, and of course. So entertainment.
So all of this is actually speaking to the fact that things keep going faster and faster,
yes,
especially in the work life. So when it comes to entertainment, I think one data point that I actually kind of resonated with, because give you a quick example. Yes, it says on the research that, you know, people are listening to podcasts faster. I actually find myself doing that sometimes at times 2, times 3 of speed. Why? Because sometimes it just feels like time is going too slow when you have to follow a certain slower train of thought, even though it's just wildly elucidated.
No, I think that's a great point. And that's what we find. So when we look at branding or trying to put messaging across to the market, now we're telling customers to play back or the ad at 2 times the speed. People don't have the patience to listen till the end. They just give me the crux of it, give me it quick.
So it needs to work at normal, but also at 2 times speed.
Yes.
Okay, fantastic.
The Gen Zs, millennials, look, give me 2 times. That's what, you know, when you look at, for example, YouTube, you have all those options, right? And that's what it's for. And
exactly.
So today, even in advertising, that's what everybody's going for.
It's being influenced, yes. Yeah. You know those quick cuts that we see everywhere we look for video-like content?
Yes.
Absolutely. So that brings us to a really critical discussion area, Azwan, which is looking at the rise of AI and automation. And this, of course, is reshaping the nature of trust itself between employers and employees. So what more can organizations do, especially as the most interesting juncture is finally here in 2025? No longer are there 5 generations under one roof in basically any organization. Now you've basically got roughly about 3 or 4.
Yeah, so trust on the back of AI. I think what we find today is also, you know, in the past, whenever you have town halls and then the leaders come to you and say, you'll be fine, it's great, nobody believes that anymore at all, because they can read. They're reading about your company from the outside in, not from inside out. So when the leader says everything is fine, and then next thing you know, you're going to lay off 500 people, etc., etc. So the trust is an issue. Worse still, when they're trying to bring in Gen AI, so the insecurity about, are they trying to relieve me of my job? Are they trying to get rid of me? So many companies, especially multinationals in the US, for example, they have conversations about Gen AI, about they allow the mass population of workers to ask what's happening in Gen AI. The other bit is another company does, hey, you know what? I'm going to train all of you in data science and AI because I value human beings in my organizations. So not necessarily replacing humans, but providing humans with bionic arms to do and be more productive, etc. So I think that's
yeah, that's the ideal situation.
Yes.
However, at the same time, though, how many companies are really able to foster that culture where they can depend on the hybrid, but at the same time value the human employees which they have?
It's difficult. So I tell you what the report gave me the stat was,
Sure.
which was in Malaysia, only 29% of employees trust their leaders to prioritize their well-being. So that's a problem, because I think it's either a communication bit, it's either leadership doesn't understand what Gen AI can bring or what technologies bring, because the fear is automation, isn't it? So, but I think the conversation is going to be absolutely key, and you have to repeat again and again. So I think if you say you commit, I'm going to reskill all of you to make sure that you're relevant to my organization, to the world out there, then there's a bit more trust. If you stay silent and say, we're just experimenting, just experimenting means what? So I think that's a big issue for most people, especially the ones that do repetitive tasks.
Very true. Yeah.
Right? So
who are most at risk, actually.
Yeah. So they say, so how would you redeploy me? So CEO says, Azwan, can we create capacity? Create capacity can be two things. Create capacity could be, I need to reduce my workforce, or create capacity so that I can redeploy to have more meaningful touch points for all my customers, for example. In Malaysia, I find it's mainly that, the latter.
Right, the latter, though.
Yes.
Okay.
So it is about preserving the workforce, making them do more meaningful jobs. I think that's what's happening in Malaysia. But it's not easy, as you said. It's not easy because people don't proactively do this, because while they're trying to figure out what to do, a lot of people are more informed. When you're younger, you're actually more informed because you're always,
socially aware.
Yes.
Yeah.
So you begin to distrust. So that's the problem.
That's interesting, because I think it brings us into the opportunity to zoom in on the youngest sector of the workforce a little bit more. So what essentially can organizations do effectively, Azwan, now to ensure that they are, number one, attracting, but also, more importantly, perhaps, retaining young talent? We're talking about those who are below 28, 30, right? We're not actually talking about those who are a little older than that. And they, of course, make up a huge cohort in Malaysia. Our median age as of 2025 is 30.7 years of age. So we're a pretty young country still. Yeah.
And this compared to Japan, where they're retiring 800,000 people a year, so which is different.
Exactly. And Europe, where the median age is close to 44. So we really have that benefit. But how do we ensure that those young people are actually going to be a part of the workforce? Yeah.
I think the young folks like to be flexible. They like hybrid. I'll come and I'll work wherever, right? So you can work from anywhere. I think that works for some companies, not for all, because it depends what industry you're in. Because if you're producing something in the factory, you've got to be in the factory.
That's right.
But for service industry, for example, you don't have to. But you have to allow them the flexibility. So the KPIs is more about measure my output, my outcome, and not my hours, or whether you see me working or not. Because that's a trust issue, right? So some of the folks say, you're working from home, but are you really working? It doesn't help that some people actually go shopping. It doesn't help.
True. We've seen those reports. We have.
I think that's what you want. And the other one is what's important also, and it's very strong, purpose-driven culture. What is our purpose? So I think in the old days, you could get away with, hey, you know what, you work to live, kind of like, okay, I need my paycheck to live day to day. But today, the bar is very, very high. I want to make a difference to Earth as a planet, to my communities, to my family, for example. So I think if you provide purpose, not from an organization perspective only, but also at the individual level, your purpose is to make sure that we and you, blah, 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 actually makes a difference. Because everybody wants to feel valued. Why? Because the social media influence, it seems to point that everybody has a role, everybody's successful, everybody's changing, saving the climate or something like that. Right?
Doing big things. So I think it's about reframing what does it mean to do big things, right? All right. So Azwan, I think let's spend a little bit of time closing out the conversation with an undeniable concern. The safety of children, especially in the online space, and how companies, regardless of who they are, you don't have to be the social media giant to have a most responsible approach, especially as we are increasingly disappointed by the type of regulations that have been coming out.
First is about education. It's about telling people what's right and what's wrong. The challenge today is, while you have, for example, a culture that you want to drive, the reality of it is culture is now driven globally. So if the content from, say, the domestic, the Malaysian market is not as good, it's not as strong, they are attracted to content overseas, and it's very hard to manage. So for the big players, for example, you have parental controls. So it's good. So I think from that perspective, parents will have more trust to kind of those platforms. But as we do everything, not just children, but also sustainability. So we've got to put everything in play so it protects both, protects the planet, protects our children. And any company that has some form of parental controls or manages or moderates content to the point that it protects the young. For example, social media in Australia, right? You cannot sign on social media until 16 years old. That's a new law.
It's a very new law.
Yes, a very new law. And I don't know how the young ones take it because they've probably been on it for...
Yes, enforcement perhaps would be very
difficult,
especially for the existing generation.
Yes. Yeah, but the government could probably one day say, without digital ID, you cannot have social media. You got all this licensing, etc.
That's
so it's interesting. So there are many things you could do. It's just whether there's necessarily political will to do it, because it's not an easy topic, and the technology changes all the time. It's very hard to catch up. You set something up, something else comes up, and then how do you kind of protect people from this as well? So I think education, regulation, participation from both government and private sector is going to be critical in ensuring that children are protected, because they are our future. They cannot be corrupted by all sorts of thinking, because it's even for us when we consume. Is this even, are UFOs real?
Yeah,
I look
exactly.
At
so really about verification.
Yeah, that's right.
Azwan, it's been such a fantastic and insightful conversation. Thanks so much for your insights today on NIAGA Spotlight.
Thank you, Tamina, for having me.
Absolutely. Well, there you go. That's all the time we have for today on NIAGA Spotlight, featuring Azwan Baharuddin, who's Country Managing Director with Accenture. We'll see you next Friday with more business and economic analysis and insights. I'm Tamina Kausji, signing off. Here's to a productive week ahead.